finally made the decision with my husband that it was time to be dads. My husband looked at me and he said, "Why are we not adopting out of foster care?" And I remember looking at him and saying, "Are you kidding me? I know about those kids." He says, "You were one of those kids."
Rob Scheer. Rob shares his inspiring journey from personal hardship to founding his organization, Comfort Cases. It's an organization that provides essential support to children in the foster care system.
I was carrying this. I was carrying a trash bag, and I walked into a house of strangers, just like one child every 2 minutes does every single day in the United States. These kids are scared. They feel they have no hope. When a child enters the foster care system, we've already failed that child. It is an industry that makes money on the backs of children. The problem is nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it because they make so much money off of it.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. Real stands for Real Examples Altering Lives. I am your host, Sean Martin. And as always, we have an amazing guest for you today. My guest is Rob Scheer. Rob shares his inspiring journey from personal hardship to founding his organization, Comfort Cases. It's an organization that provides essential support to children in the foster care system. Over 40 years ago, Rob himself was part of this foster care system. And as many of our guests do, he was brave and bold enough to turn his pain into purpose. Welcome today, Mr. Rob Scheer. Rob, how are you?
I'm great, Sean. I'm great. You know, I love the fact how you say that pain to purpose. When I was on the Today Show, I remember sitting there with Kathy Gifford and Hoda, and Kathy was like, "Do you think you'll ever write a book?" And I, at that point, this is years ago, I said, "No." I said, "I'm a banker by trade for 28 years." And she said, "If you ever decide to write a book, I think you should name it. You should actually call it Pain to Purpose." That's actually not what my memoir ended up being named, thanks to Derek Jeter. But it actually, I'll never forget that story of Kathy saying that to me.
I don't know if you can see him off camera here, but that's my guy number 2, Derek Jeter, over here in the corner. Because
Derek actually published my memoir along with Simon & Schuster and Gallery Books. So
really?
Yes.
What's the name of it?
Yes, it's A Forever Family.
Very, very beautiful. I got to check that out. So, Rob, your journey from overcoming personal adversity to founding Comfort Cases is inspiring. Can you share more about the pivotal moments that led you on this mission? Tell us a little bit about your story.
You know what, Sean, the fact is I know each and every one of us have a story. And that's the thing that some of us are afraid to tell. And for me, for so long, I didn't want to tell my story. See, my story probably didn't end up like yours or most people that I've met. I'm actually the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times. We lived in and out of every shelter in Maryland, Virginia, D.C. I never once remember a picture on the wall. I never remember a Christmas tree. I never remember any birthday celebrations. But the saddest part is I never remember her looking at me and saying, "I love you." But what I remembered is the monster that she would allow to live in our home, the monster that she would make me call dad. And actually, he was my dad. And for me as a young little boy, I remember being about 7 years old in the front yard of some other house that we were probably going to leave in the middle of the night because my parents didn't pay the rent. And I remember seeing a dad in the yard across the street with his son. And I thought to myself at that time, when I grow up, I want to be a dad so bad. I want to be a dad that looks at his son and really loves his son and not put cigarettes out on him like my father did, or beat me like my father did, or hold food from my sisters and my brothers like my father did. And that was my family. I mean, even at a young age, I started hearing the word foster care because my brothers and sisters had started falling to the wayside. And what people don't realize is that in our foster care system, it is a system that has failed our youth. And right now we're looking at roughly almost 400,000 kids in foster care. They come into the system because of choices other people made. We are filling our penitentiaries. 80% of our death row inmates were actually touched or in foster care. And here my brothers and sisters were going on the path: teenage pregnancy, incarceration, drug addiction. But for me, I just wanted to have a family. And I thought that this was the family. And I was 12 years old. And finally, I was removed from my parents' house. One more bruise, one more cigarette out. And I walked up to the very first foster home. And the crazy part is, I was carrying this. I was carrying a trash bag. I had all my belongings in it, which, by the way, barely amounted to anything. And I walked into a house of strangers, just like one child every 2 minutes does every single day in the United States.
Wow. What a story of just hanging on and resilience. And it's often said that the difference between those who win and those who don't is just hanging on and not giving up. And for some reason, through God's grace and through all of that tragedy and all of that ugliness, you were able to find something beautiful, to say the least.
I want to tell you that, I hear people say that all the time. And, for me, being 12 years old and going into foster care, thinking that this was going to be my saving grace, turned out to be just as bad as a nightmare. Maybe they didn't beat me. Maybe they didn't put cigarettes out on me, but I still felt like I was second. And, there was never any pictures of me hung on the wall or on the mantle with their biological children. They didn't take me on the great vacations. I didn't get to play the sports. I didn't get to join the clubs. I didn't get to go to all the things that their children did because I was a kid with the F word in front of my name. I didn't get that, but I just wanted them to love me. And I remember I would wake up in the morning. I'd clean their kitchen before they asked me to. I'd always watch their 3 biological kids because they always would say, these are our biological kids and this is our foster kid. And so it wasn't until the fall of 1984 I couldn't believe it. I actually had not thought much about the fact that the F word was in front of my name. My main focus was to get an education, to get that diploma in high school. I was going to be the first one in my family ever to graduate. And I really just applied myself to school. And I remember walking into my foster parents' house. And by the way, Sean, I started calling them mom and dad because somewhere deep down, I thought that they loved me. Even though they never put a picture of me on the wall, I just felt that they had to have loved me because I lived in this house for 5 years at this point. And I remember when I walked into the front door, there it was sitting, my trash bag. It was literally sitting in the living room completely full of my clothes. And I remember looking at my mom saying, what is this? And she says, you got to go. And I looked at my dad and I said, what do you mean I've got to go? This is my home. He says, no, this isn't your home. This is your house. This is our home. We are no longer receiving a check because you're 18 years old and you can no longer live here. And I literally became homeless. See, the fact is we'll see 22,000 kids age out of foster care this year. And the saddest part is that 70% of them will become homeless within the first 12 months, just like me. And I literally became an 18-year-old boy living on the streets of Northern Virginia with a trash bag. And the only thing I wanted was an education.
It sounds like you also wanted the most valuable thing, in my humble opinion, that human beings need: love.
Yeah.
Where does this desire come from, and where does the moxie, where does the fight come in? Because, brother, I've got to tell you, you can be as humble as you want, but as a young kid, to continue to hope, to continue to want better, to continue to know that something was on the other side, where did you get that? Was there someone along the way, even in passing through all this tragedy, that touched you in a way that gave you that hope, or was it something that God planted in your heart?
The thing is that as I look back now as a 58-year-old man, father of 5 kids who I've adopted, I truly do believe that there were people within my journey that did touch me, that gave me that extra little push. I remember, after the first couple of days of being homeless, I hid my trash bag and I walked into school. And I remember I walked into school every single day. and kids would push me in the locker because I smelled. I had holes in the bottom of my shoes. My friend, let me tell you something. I was 15 years old before I learned how to tie my shoes because nobody bothered to stop to say, hey, let's teach this boy something. See, that's typical in foster care. We are your throwaway children. We are your children who are invisible and disposable. But there was one particular teacher who always would bring extra food. And so after several times of catching me in the lunchroom waiting for the kids to all leave, I would dig in the trash and gather as much food as I could so I would eat that night. And the manager of the local taco place found out that I was the token homeless kid on the street, and he would leave the outside bathroom door unlocked so I could sleep there at night. And it was finally June of 1985. It was graduation day. And I remember I walked to the front office and I said to the front lady, I said, I can't afford a cap and gown. And I said, and I really want to walk across that stage. And I remember as she went back and found me a cap and gown, I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I said, Robert, you did it. You did it. When no one else believed in you, when no one else rooted for you, when no one else even looked at you, you did it. And people ask me, where did I get that grit? As a young boy, where did I get that grit? And I know this sounds so cliche, but you know what? I truly believe in a higher power. I truly believe that my Heavenly Father truly had a purpose for me. And whether it's a he, a she, you want to call them whatever you want, I don't know, but I just do know, I know that there's something larger than me that helped me grab that grit and keep going. And then it happened. I walked across the stage. And I remember as I was standing in line, listening to all the kids' parents clapping and screaming, and then they called my name. Quiet. No one clapped. No one cheered. I realized at that moment that the trash bag that was handed to me in the 70s and then again in the 80s had actually done its job. Made me invisible, disposable, as if I did not matter. And I remember as I left that auditorium, I never went back to my seat. I went back to the back parking lot. And I realized at that moment that my community, and by the way, your listeners and viewers need to understand, is your community is not your zip code. Your community is our human race. And I truly realized that my human race had given me, a kid with the F word in front of his name, only 3 choices. Choice number 1, we give up. Suicide rate in foster care is higher than we have ever seen before, and no one talks about it. Choice number 2, we give in. We join your gangs. We fill your penitentiaries. We do all the petty crimes because we need a roof over our head. Or choice number 3, we give it all we got. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the United States Navy. I became a very successful businessman. I owned mortgage companies all over this country. And the only thing I cared about was me. Having a big house where you looked at it and said, wow, who lives in that house? They are successful. I wanted to make sure I had a very fancy car, and I bought 2 because I wanted you to look at me at that stoplight and say, damn, that guy is successful. And then I filled my bank account so fat I could take all of you to Disney World. But that was, to me, what was important until 16 years ago when I finally made the decision with my husband that it was time to be dads. See, I wanted to adopt a baby overseas. I wanted a little baby. And my husband looked at me and he said, why are we not adopting out of foster care? And I remember looking at him and saying, are you kidding me? I was like, I know about those kids. He says, you were one of those kids. See, my husband, Reese, he was born in the Midwest. Him and his mom and dad had been married 50 some years. My husband didn't even know the word foster care until he met me. It took me 3 months after dating him to even tell him even part of my story. And, we're just getting ready to celebrate 20 years. But it was him who said, Rob, if we could change a child's life for one day, don't you think that we made an impact? And sure enough, he was right. And sure enough, within 3 months, we became fathers to 4 kids.
Wow. Just 0 to 60. Go. He went from 1 baby to 4 grown kids.
4 babies. My kids, so my first 2 kids, Amaya and Makai, they arrived when they were 6. They were 2 and 4.
Okay.
They both carried trash bags. And I was shocked. I was like, what in the world? I was like, are you telling me we live in this society?
All these years later, and there's still the trash bag thing going on.
Yes. And then 3 months later, we got a phone call that they had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, 2 little brothers. And sure enough, we said yes, and we literally became these two guys that lived in DC in this beautiful brownstone, having cocktail parties and hobnobbing with the mayor and senators. And the next thing you know, we're two men with four kids changing diapers every 4 hours.
Wow, what a shift! But if anybody that I've ever heard of was built to do this, it sounds like you. Nothing harder than raising a family. I always say it's the hardest thing you'll ever do because it's for life, marriage and family. But I mean, again, it's what would you tell a kid in foster care, a young adult in foster care, or an older teen, I would say, if they're feeling and experiencing the same things that you were going through? Because I mean, there's so much hopelessness, but yet and still you held on to this hope. And it allowed you to transform your life. I also had a similar story in that going out and finding success in the toys, it's a big F you to the world. All right, you put me through this, I'll show you. But then you realize I'm still empty. There's still a big hole in my heart. And you filled it with your mission. But I want you to just express to me what you'd say to somebody who's losing hope or they're on their last strings of hope in a similar situation that you found yourself in.
See, Sean, I was fortunate enough in 2019 to meet our fifth child. And, recently I thought 4 kids as we were raising them, that was it. And that was great. And life was amazing. And, 13, almost 14 years ago, we started our nonprofit. Life was good. And my memoir had come out. I decided to sell all my companies, become a public speaker, travel the country to educate people about kids like me, kids like my children. And a young boy walked up to me. He was 18 years old. And he asked if I would sign his book. And the next thing you know, my husband and I adopted him 3 months later. See, the fact is Alex had been in foster care most of his life. And the only thing that he needed was someone to believe in him. And what I would tell any kid who is floundering in this shattered system is, number 1, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Number 2, understand that you do not blame the system. Do not blame the system, because that hate that you build up within your soul will eat you to the core and make you do the things that you know you should not do. And so what do? You take all of that energy and you decide that you are the person that writes the pages in your book. You are the one at night that gets to put the period where the period belongs. You are the one who gets to make the decision who's in your book and what chapter am I on. But I always tell people, don't blame the system. Jump in it and help me change the system.
Yeah, I always have 2 words, my fault. No matter what happens to me, I spin it around. Maybe this was out of my control, but it's my fault if I hold on to it. Now that comes through maturity and having failed so many times that I know that there's brighter pastures, greener pastures on the other side. So the empowerment of taking stock and not putting blame, because blame is the kiss of death. It really is, because once you start to blame, it is so easy to go down that road. And all of us are guilty of it in our day-to-day lives. So I can't imagine how easy that would be for some young kid who hasn't lived their life going through the system. And you mentioned the system. And that's what the problem is. It is a system.
It is an industry, Sean, that makes money on the backs of children.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is.
I know plenty of people that do it for the check over the years that I've come across.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. When a child enters the foster care system, we've already failed that child. We've already failed that child. And again, it is an industry that makes money on the backs of children. And that's something that we have to change, and we can change it. The problem is nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it because they make so much money off of it. Right. And I'm one of these people that I'm not a yes, sir. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what. Now, let me also explain. Not every foster parent is bad. Okay. Right. And the thing is that, and I completely understand that, but we also have to realize and peel back the onion and realize that we have a system that we have had for generation after generation after generation that has done nothing but fail our children. And the thing that gets me the most is that we as a nation can sit here and change our vocabulary. And we no longer say, oh, look at that homeless man on the corner. We say, look at that man who's experiencing homelessness. Well, when are we going to change our vocabulary for kids in our foster care system and realize that these are children who are experiencing foster care? They're not bad. They didn't ask to be put there. They are there because of choices other people made. And for generations, you've heard this, I've heard this, everybody I know has heard this. The generations of the older people would say, oh, invest in a child and you invest in their future. That is a bald-faced lie. It is a lie that's been told to everybody. When you invest in a child, you actually invest in your future. You invest in my future because they are our leaders of tomorrow. So why wouldn't we invest in them? It makes no sense. But stop blaming the fact that we invest in them for them. No, we should be investing in them for us to make sure that our future is stronger than it is today.
I think your compassion is evident. Your heart is evident. Your purpose is evident, just in the energy that I can even feel through the screen. And we know we can't change the system, but we can change perception and we can change lives through our own actions. So what were some of the challenges you faced once you decided to start comfort cases that you found yourself up against?
Well, first of all, let me tell you something. I don't agree with you that we can't change the system. I will tell you that in the state of Maryland, the state of Texas, the state of Colorado, we're working in New York City, that we have actually had bills that have been passed, that we have been able to pass through our organization at Comfort Cases, where it is actually now a law on the books that it is illegal to give a child a trash bag. So let me tell you something. We did that with a lot of hard work for getting people to listen to our story. And by the way, these are bipartisan bills because whether kids in foster care they don't care whether you're blue or you're red. They just want you to care. They just truly want you to care. But 13 years ago, as I was sitting in my office, and I'll never forget it, I had offices all over the country. I was sitting in my office in Rockville, Maryland, and my assistant and my husband walked in and was talking about the toy drive that we would do every year for those needy kids in foster care. And this one particular year, I said, I don't want to do it. And they said, what do you mean? I said, what are we teaching our children? I said, our children are privileged. They go to private schools. They have passports. They wear designer clothes. I was like, we failed them. And I remember Reese saying to me, how could you think that we failed them? Our kids are just amazing. I said, we forgot to teach them the most important thing. And he said, what is that? I said, empathy. Empathy. See, the fact is we all must understand that empathy is not in our DNA. It is taught. And the thing that we must understand is our legacy as we leave the face of this earth should not be about what we took, but about what we gave. And I remember saying to Reese, I want to make a backpack. I want a backpack. I want a brand new pair of pajamas in it with a tag. I want every kid to get their own lotion, shampoo, conditioner, bar of soap. I wanted every kid to get their own toothbrush and toothpaste. I wanted kids to get their own activity. See, most people don't understand is that 90% of kids who enter foster care enter in the back of a police cruiser. They go to a holding center that actually is, almost like a jail cell. They have nothing to do. I wanted them to have an activity. I wanted every child to have a book because I truly do believe that if you educate a child's mind, you will educate all of our futures. Then I wanted every kid to get a stuffed animal because I don't care whether you're a newborn or you're 58, we all love a good stuffy. And then finally, my son, Grayson, he arrived when he was 2. His mother was 12. He came into the system with bleeding of the brain, shaken baby syndrome, and 3 broken ribs. At the age of 5, my son Grayson looked at me and he said, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every backpack. And I said, a blankie? I said, you don't know these kids are not cold, Grayson. He says, I know, Daddy, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. Sean, that's what each and every one of us want. We want to be loved. We want to know we matter. We're not disposable. And with that, we packed a case. and another and another. And my friend, I'm here to tell you, in the last 13 years at a 96% volunteer ran charity, we have packed and delivered over 260,000 cases.
Wow.
We have delivered these cases to all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And I know I don't have to remind all you smart people, Puerto Rico belongs to us. Yes, it's surrounded by water, but so is Hawaii. See, the fact that we must understand is that our forefathers, they built communities for one reason, and it wasn't for our bushes to match. They built communities to take care of each other. That if I'm hungry and you have a piece of bread, you should be sharing that with me. And if you're hungry and I have a piece of bread, I should be sharing it with you. But in 2021, I woke up and realized that my journey wasn't over. And so what my husband and I did is we went to the UK and we opened up another center. And we have a center in the UK where we serve 84,000 children in the foster care system. Because whether you live on this side of the pond or that side of the pond, we are all one. We are all one. And it's up to us to make sure that children know when they walk into foster care that they are loved, that they do matter, and that someone cares about them.
That is an amazing, amazing story. And for you to take it across the pond, I didn't even know that, to be honest with you. So Comfort Cases has become this lifeline for so many kids here in the States, Puerto Rico, and also now in the UK. How do you keep the organization's core values intact and at the forefront as it continues to grow and evolve so far from its original home?
Well, the fact is that I remind people all the time, we all have an opportunity to be a good human. It's on our T-shirts that we wear. It's something that I remind people all the time is to be a good human. But the thing, Sean, that I want to say to you and to say to your viewers and listeners is that you all must understand something. You do not have to know someone to love someone. You don't have to know them to love them. And I think that is something that I see on a day in, day out basis at our national center right outside of DC. I have volunteers. There's almost a 2-month waiting list for people to come into our center to pack these cases. We're the only organization. We do not charge for our cases. Social workers can go on our website. They can order our cases every single month from birth up to the age of 21, and we send them to them for free. And our cases retail for about $110. But then 7 years ago, I was sitting in my office. I'd given up everything to really focus on child welfare. And I remember saying to Reese that, you know what, my goal was to eliminate trash bags. And I do know that we're giving hope and comfort with our backpacks. I was like, but I really want to do something. So I went to my little friends over at Briggs & Riley. They are the leading luxury luggage brand. By the way, Sean, they're located, their corporate office, right down the street from where you are. And I actually said to them, listen, I told them my story. And I said, I need a bag. I need a bag that kids can carry their belongings in. And so Briggs & Riley put together, they made this 32-inch duffel bag. It retails for $149.
Nice.
And I give these actually away free to kids in foster care. And we have given over 110,000 of these cases away. And we give them to our frontline workers. We give them to teachers, anyone that is in contact with a child from foster care. So no one will ever grab a trash bag again. Then instead what they'll do is they'll grab a Comfort XL. And so that's why I'm constantly pleading for people to join a bag buster program, because for just $10 a month, I literally can take a trash bag out of a child's hand and hand them a Comfort XL.
Elaborate on that if you don't mind. Bag busters.
Yeah, so we started this program where, for just $10 a month, you can sign up, and it literally helps us continue to fund our organization. See, I don't have any big corporate sponsors who are writing me $1 million checks, but I do have the biggest corporation in the world that is supporting us, and we're about a $5.5 million organization. And that big corporation that's funding us is our human race. Our average donor is $8. We receive donations from all over the world. We receive people who are sending us quilts, and they send us, and by the way, we don't brand any of our stuff whatsoever. You see right behind me, you can see some of the backpacks that we use. All of our backpacks are different. They're different colors because we truly do know that children are different. And I've had huge corporations come into me and say, hey, I'll pay for all your backpacks if you let me put my logo on it. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, thank you. This isn't a dog and pony show. This is to give kids, I don't need your logo and every kid to say, oh, you must be in foster care because you have one of those bags with that logo on it.
Right.
It doesn't work like that for us. We do not allow any branding, and we don't brand our own logo on anything.
Beautiful, because they're carrying around enough baggage, pun intended. And as someone who's carried a trash bag before with his belongings, not in the same dramatic fashion, but it is definitely not a sense of pride by any stretch. So to have a beautiful bag like that most adults wouldn't have has got to be, quite an uplifter for many of them. So you've had the opportunity to witness, I'm sure, hundreds of stories and different lives you've affected through comfort cases firsthand. Can you share a story that stands out or has profoundly affected you and continues to inspire your work?
Yeah, I will tell you. I say this story often because I can't get it out of my mind. I was actually down in Florida giving a speech. And whenever I go to give a speech, we normally are packing cases, and I get to go visit group homes and meet kids, who are in the system. And I happened to go to this one particular group home and was handing out cases. And there were two little girls sitting on the floor, 9 and 10. And I went over and I sat down next to them, and I found out they were sisters. And I looked at them and I said, so tell me, as they were pulling their items out of their out of their backpack, I said, tell me, what is your most favorite thing in that bag? And most kids tell me it's their stuffed animal or their book. And this 10-year-old little girl pulled out her toothbrush and she said, my toothbrush. And I said, your toothbrush? I said, how could that be your favorite thing? And she looked at me and she said, Mr. Rob, my sister and I have been in this group home for a month and we've been sharing a toothbrush. Wow. My friends, I will tell you, stop thinking that your society and your government are taking care of these kids, because they're not. Because then when I went to the executive director and asked her why, her exact words to me was, well, why didn't she come and tell me? Wow. Why didn't she come and tell me? These kids are scared. They absolutely don't want to be a burden. These kids they feel they have no hope. They miss their moms. They miss their dads. And by the way, it is not for us to judge how bad their parents were. It is us to show them that they can be loved. And that story, those two girls, I can never get out of my mind.
Perspective is everything. Just so many amazing stories. And I'm just wondering when it was that you had the courage, because I'm sure, like many people that have this calling or this itch, before you had the courage and the insight, or you actually pulled the trigger on starting comfort cases, how long was it before you knew this was what you were meant for? And when you actually got on the journey?
First of all, this is not what I was meant for. Let's be honest. I come from the .com world. I'm a taker. And so for me to jump to the .org world where we are givers was not in what I was banking for 28 years. I mean, I had a plush job. I'll never forget it. It was 2018. And, I remember when I was going out on my book tour, I had to go to my board of trustees at my banks and let them know that I was going to take a leave of absence to go on this book tour across the country. And I remember as I was going on this tour, I kept getting this yearning to talk and to talk more and to talk more. And I remember when I came home and I said to Reese, I said, listen, I think I'm going to step away and I'm going to become a public speaker. And I remember he looked at me and says, you do realize you're the breadwinner of this family. My husband's a stay-at-home dad and has been for the last 12 years. And I said, listen, I believe in this. I believe that I can do this. And I took the leap of faith and I believed in myself. And I tell people all the time, I no longer have a job. My job stopped in 2018. I now have a purpose. I have a purpose. Every day when I wake up, I have a purpose. I have a purpose to make sure that I educate another person about the amazing, wonderful, kind, caring, loving kids who are in our foster care system.
So many parallels in the journey between overcoming, finding success that doesn't fulfill you, turning a corner, knowing this is your purpose, and going all in on it. I'm just segueing now because this is hitting home for me. Who is someone that you recently would consider to be or give credit to for becoming a mentor in your life in this new chapter?
Wow, what a great question. You know what? Let me tell you something. Another cliche thing. It's my husband. He is the one who, every day, he's my biggest critic. He is my biggest supporter. I spent 189 nights in hotels last year as a public speaker, my friend.
Wow.
Between my husband and our 5 kids, they are truly what lets me get up every single morning. Somebody asked me, I'm 58 years old. When are you looking at, are you starting to look at that retirement? And I was like, what is that word? That word isn't in my vocabulary. There's no retirement for me. You do not retire from something that you're passionate about and something that you see the needle moving. You keep moving. But the person who I will say inspires me so much, besides my husband, is my son, Makai. See, my son, Makai, is 18 years old. When my son, Makai, arrived, he was 2. We were told that he was never going to talk. He probably would never walk without braces on his legs, and that he was autistic. Well, when Makai was 5 years old, after finally getting through the adoption process, we took Makai to Children's Hospital and had all the genetic testing done on him. And we found out that Makai didn't have autism, but he had what they call fetal alcohol syndrome, and that his frontal lobe wasn't going to develop. And at that point, at the age of 5, Makai was walking. He was barely saying any words. He was still in a pull-up. And I remember the doctor looking at me saying, maybe you might want to think about institutionalizing him because this is the best you're going to get. I remember looking at that doctor saying, this is our son, and he's a Scheer, and we will never give up on him. My son is 18 years old. He's graduating high school this year. He is the president of his senior class. He has already received a college application. He has stood up and spoke in front of 300 people and gave his story. My son, Makai, is resilient, just like so many other kids. So every single day when he looks at me and says, Dad, let's do this. Oh my gosh, what a feeling within my heart. It's amazing.
I see you light up, brother. I see you light up. So, I mean, it's that's what it's all about. And for someone who doesn't come from any kind of healthy family background like yourself, that's got to be the gravity.
Oh,
and me going on a similar mission now without the 189 days, let's just say 30 to 40 last year, but knowing it's trending toward the direction you just mentioned as a speaker and someone who's dedicating their life to change, the family element scares the shit out of me, to be quite frank, because I've worked so hard. My wife and I have worked so hard to put this together. But yeah, it's not cliche, because for someone whose proudest achievement, despite all your achievements, is their family, similar to mine, I personally know what that fear looks like. And that's why I wanted to get into how you got from knowing to doing, because there's a story that we're telling ourselves. And most people, unfortunately, are unaware of that. It takes life, it takes living it, failing, falling on your face, the whole nine, before you realize that you're the one telling yourself the story. And to have your husband and to have your son and that success story, that's got to just motivate you to just, like you said, keep going. What our word, retirement, for what?
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Believe it, my friend. You better believe it.
Yeah.
There's so much more left to do.
Absolutely.
So much more left to do.
Absolutely. And you seem like you've got a great hold on the present. What does the future look like for Comfort Cases?
First of all, I would love to be able to shut my organization down because I hope never will a child be given a trash bag, but I know that's not realistic. So we will continue to do what we have been doing for the last 13 years. We will continue to grow. We will continue to educate people. We will continue to make sure that every child who walks in the system, and by the way, 700 a day, 1 every 2 minutes come into foster care in the United States. We need to make sure that every single one of these children know that they are loved, that they're not second-class citizens. They're not disposable. They do matter, and we want them to succeed. And that to me is something. My biggest thing right now is my heart is full of the kids who are aging out of the system, that we have not prepared them to be out of the system, and they are floundering on the streets. So through our organization, we have built a pathway to success, that what we call it. So we do mentoring for kids who are aging out. We offer scholarships to kids who are aging out. We offer kids to be able to take, financial literacy classes for free through Comfort Cases, through this pathway for success story, because I truly believe that that's another way we need change to happen, is to truly support kids who are aging out of foster care.
What does the age out process look like? You described yours, which was cruel. Your bag was by the door. Get out. There's no more checks coming, buddy. You're on your own.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Wow.
The only thing that's changed is the age. I mean, some states are still at 18. Some have moved to 21. Nothing has changed. It's just the age that has changed. It's still done the same way. It's still done. Hey, this is your age. You're done. See you later. There's no checks giving out. There's no making sure you have an apartment. There's no making sure. It's like, see ya. They come riding in on their white horse to save these little kids. But as soon as that little kid no longer is a little cute little kid and is now 18, 19, 21 years old, then it's time to say goodbye and figure it out.
Right. Now, what does that process look like in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, or what you began with Comfort Cases? Is that part of Comfort Cases, or are you working with other organizations to provide that financial literacy, that mentorship?
So we're actually working with colleges. Let me tell you something. I've learned in this nonprofit world, the majority of nonprofits do not play well together, which is very, very sad. And so the thing is that I remind people all the time, nonprofits should all be on the same island, not on different islands. So we're always happy to collaborate with other nonprofits. I think that that's a key. We do have some that we collaborate with. We love them dearly. But, it doesn't stop us. I mean, we have a team of volunteers who are passionate about, sending hope boxes to these kids. Sean, the fact is, people don't even realize that only 54% of kids who are in high school only 54% actually graduate from high school, and that only 11% fill out a college application, and that only 3% of kids in foster care get a 4-year degree. That's it.
Wow. So the odds are definitely stacked against them. You've got, now you mentioned something that I wasn't planning on talking about, but I think it's interesting, that nonprofits don't work nicely together. And I am experiencing that myself in my own ventures with nonprofits, where I thought the doors were, hey, look, it's
yes, you thought, hey, that table's so big, we all could sit at it.
There's such a scarcity mindset. And I think it's because they don't come from an entrepreneurial background or a financial background like you do or like I do. So what I'm finding is they're competing, and they see it as competition for the same funds and the same dollars and the same organization. So my take was, let me bring a different point of view. It's an abundance mindset. There's plenty of private money. You're proof to that. There's plenty of people in the world that want to help. What are you doing to attract their attention instead of getting a grant writer who's using a template and going after the same funding every year? So interesting that you brought that up.
The thing is that I share my grant list to people all the time, because I tell people all the time, there's enough money to go around, and not everybody wants to give to us, but maybe they might give to another organization. And I want them to know about that. I'm very lucky. I mean, when it comes to the fact that, number one, we get a lot of media when it comes to our organization. So one, we're lucky there. Number two, my development director has been with me from the day that we started our organization. And so, and then again, then, we have a huge social media following. And so with having that huge social media following, we get, like I said, people from all over the country and all over the world that are donating every single month to keep this organization and operation running.
Such a beautiful way to just accept reality for what it is, brother. And I'm looking at it not from a point of just comfort cases, but as a human being, I think you have that abundance mindset only because you know what nothing feels like, to have no love, to have no material things, to have no support, to have holes in your shoes. What an amazing story. I just want to say thank you again for coming on, sharing your story, sharing your heart, sharing your purpose. And I'd like for you to leave me and the audience with a few words on the impact that you continue to make, desire to make, and how we can help.
You know what? The thing is that I want each and every person to know that it only takes one pebble to start a rippling effect. And if we all happen to throw our pebbles into the water again, could you imagine the wave that we would all cause? And I think that that's what we need to understand, is that we are together, no matter what our race is, no matter what our sexual orientation is, no matter how we vote, we are one. We are one, and we're all a pebble. And I just feel like there was going to be a day that we will throw our pebble in that water, and that wave will definitely push. But the thing I also want people to realize is that we are all given the same thing. When we're born, we're given the year we were born. And when we die, we're all given the year that we die. But the one thing that we don't understand is that each and every one of us will be given something, and it's called a dash. And there's a poem about it. And it's the dash between the year you're born and the year you die. What I would say to each and every one of us, make your dash shine. Make your dash shine so bright that when people walk by it, they really look at it and they say, you know what? That person, they didn't talk about it. They did it. They did it. And that's what we all need to do.
Amen to that. Action speaks louder than words. Where can our audience find more information if they want to support Comfort Cases?
Sure. You can go to comfortcases.org. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Rob Scheer on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook. Follow us and see what's happening next, and be a part of our packing parties. Sean, we do these packing parties all over the country where we bring our communities together and pack cases for kids, and those cases stay right there within that area.
Well, I'd like to find out more about what's going on here in New York so I could obviously not only bring myself, but my queen, my kids.
Yes.
And I like to involve them because as someone who comes from humble beginnings and has made good financially, it was always a fear of mine that I'm going to spoil my kids, similar to how you touched on. And how beautiful that now I'm on this mission, because it's the only way they're not only going to see firsthand where daddy and mommy are from, but how they can change the world by giving back and showing up. So thank you again for your time, Rob. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your mission.
You're welcome, my friend.